All right. When you're doing your budget, we get asked all the time, how much do I put toward these categories and line items? I have no clue because I've never done a budget before. Let's talk about that. Mike, when we talk about budgeting and when we walk people through this, our clients and people, we constantly talk about getting your household set up first, right? Putting your money in these specific categories, and we call that stuff. That comes first before you do anything else. S-T-U-F. First, we need to review what does stuff mean? What does it stand for? So why don't you review that with us?
Stuff. S is for shelter. Think of your roof, your house, whatever that means for you. T, transportation, to and from work. U is for utilities. And then F is for food. So those four are really your baseline, your concrete, your foundation for what needs to happen when it comes to the ordering of your budget, right? We tend to put giving first as the top of the budget line item. But as far as you and your consumption, we need to make sure your stuff is in line, right? Shelter, transportation, utilities, and food.
Yeah. I talk about this all the time as in our survival categories. What does it take to survive, right? You need
Mm.
shelter, you need transportation because you need income to get to and from work. You need your utilities because you need hot water and you need gas and all those things, electricity, and then you need food. You need to put food on the table. So if you have those four things, I say, okay, you can breathe because you're taking care of your household has its needs. Everything else pretty much is going to be a want or a cultural thing, right? When we live in the Western world. But those four things are going to be what you need to survive. We'll get back to the episode in just a second, but we wanted to give you a gift just for being here today. Thank you so much. We've got a 3-part video workshop absolutely free for you. This workshop is designed to help you get organized with your money so that you can give yourself a 10% raise. When you give yourself a 10% raise, you are going to have more money. And when you have more money, we will show you exactly what to do with that money so that you can get on the path to financial freedom and start living your life, your ideal life today. You're going to learn how to get out of debt. You're going to learn how to save money. You're going to learn how to free up money so that you can invest for your future. If you're unfulfilled with life, whether it be at work, in your personal life, or with your money, then this is the workshop for you. Visit sentinelcoaching.com/raise. That's sentinelcoaching.com/raise, or click the link in the description. Now, back to the episode. Once we introduce these things, Mike, people always ask, well, how much do I put in food? I don't know. There's 2 of us, there's 4 of us, there's 6 of us. How much do I put for groceries? How much should my utilities cost? How much should I put toward my transportation? Or if I'm in public transit and I don't have a car, like how much money is acceptable for that in a regular budget? Now, everything's going to be different, right? We always have that classic, it depends. But in general, there are these ranges. And you've come up with this because you've done a lot of research on this. So, what is some of those averages when it comes to the S, the T, the U, and the F in our situation?
Certainly. So S for shelter, your home, your rent or your mortgage should be no more than 25% of your take home pay, right? So the smaller that number, the more you have to spend elsewhere. And so we want you to keep that at 25% or less when it comes to shelter. And that's for rent or mortgage. For transportation, we want that to be between 10 and 15%. Again, if it's less, that's okay. But it really should not be more than that when it comes to your income if you're listening and watching this, right? Because we want you to get debt free and not have a car payment. So this is transportation such as car repairs, insurance, gas, maintenance, those types of things. Now, utilities, 5% or less when it comes to water, electricity. This is based on your average income of the US or Australia, right? The Western world, Jason mentioned, whatever that average is. And that really comes to light with F for food, right? And we believe 5 to 15% should be spent for food. Because if you're making $100,000, 5 to 15%, right? That's 5,000 to 15,000 is pretty in alignment. But if you're making $1 million a year, you're probably not spending $50,000 or $150,000 on food. Right? So these are based on averages. Engage it for your household. Right? If you're making less than the average income, household income, well, maybe these numbers will be a little bit less or a little bit more. Right? Maybe you don't have a car. Maybe you ride a bicycle to work, like I did for over 5 years, almost 10 years. I didn't have a car. Right? So you get to make these choices.
I love the fact that you say you get to make these choices because and I can be the devil's advocate here and say, well, it's impossible. I lived in California for crying out loud, or and then I moved to Toronto, BC, or Toronto, Ontario, and now I'm in Vancouver, BC. All three of those locations are some of the highest uh, in the world as far as cost of living. How in the world, and this is my like, how in the world can you expect me to only spend 25% when I have an average income, but I live in a place like Northern California, San Francisco area, or Toronto, or Vancouver, or New York City, or Seattle, right? All these really high places. Now, that's just why we say it's averaged, because in some areas it's going to be a little bit more. But you know what? You have to make the choice as far as do you want to have so much money going towards your housing that you can't put money toward other things. If that's the case, you need to do one of two things or both. Reduce your expenses somehow so that you can live in that area, or you need to increase your income so that you can live in that area. Right? One of those two things. That's the only two ways to improve your financial situation. Right? You might have to make that choice that you have to leave that city or go further out from that city to have cheaper lodging, cheaper transportation, cheaper utilities, cheaper food, right? All these things. It's your choice. But the big thing that I want to say is you have to keep adjusting your life to figure out what works for you. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We're not limiting you because we want you to have a smaller lifestyle. We limit these things so that you can have a better life, your ideal life for yourself. Because the more you spend on these things, the less things you can do that's considered the fun things of life. Got to remember that.
Yes. And you can have one area. I'll give you a great example. I moved to an expensive city as well in my 20s, and I chose to live right in the city. Right. So my rent was more, but it was reduced by having roommates. Right. So I rented a furnished room when I first got there, and it worked out really well. It was at 25% of my take-home pay, and I was okay with that because I chose to ride a bicycle. Right. I did not have a car. And so even though I was at that threshold of 25% for my shelter, my transportation was really at less than 1% because I just didn't own a car. I had nothing else and everything that comes with that. Right. For me, fuel, parking, tickets, maintenance, registration, taxes. Yeah, think about all those things that come with just owning a car that you pay cash for. Right. And I didn't have all those expenses when it came to riding a bicycle. Now, I did have public transportation or taxis if I wanted it, but really it was much smaller than the 10 or 15% for transportation. So just know that going forward. And maybe your rent, if you find a place that includes your utilities, right? So then therefore you have zero for utilities, which is a pretty cool place to be because I've been there as well.
Hmm.
And maybe you need to move further out from the city. Did that as well. You share food with other people. There's all types of options when it comes to reducing these. And Jason and I go into depth in every one of these categories when it comes to your budget. And you click the link below, but we'll tell you it is sentinelcoaching.com/ILMA budget. And you can jump into our online budgeting course and really get a jump start on starting to live your ideal life, the one that you want to live while being in control of your money. Because we believe that you can shave off years, if not decades, to starting to live your ideal life. And that's what we want for you. That's why you're watching this video.
Yeah. It's really, really important to understand what you want your ideal life to look like? And we talk about this pretty much in every video, every course, everything that we put out. We are constantly talking about what you want your ideal life to look like. So if you want to have a higher food budget, do that, but you're having to decrease someplace else so that you can have that higher food budget. I'm that person, right? My wife and I are big foodies. We love going out to eat. We love trying new things. So our food budget is higher, but we sacrifice someplace else so that we can have a higher food budget, right? Now we're not going astronomically where it's like we can't afford to live, right? We're living debt free and we have all the things that we need to have, but we do design that ideal life around food and travel and the things that really are important to us. So Mike and I want you to spend money extravagantly on things that are really important to you, but then cut deeply on the things that are not important to you. So these things can always be altered. And the key is to keep trying and finagling this until you figure out what works for you and your ideal life. That's the big thing. Don't do it because we say it. Don't do it because your financial advisor says it. Don't do it because some celebrity tells you to do it. Do this because you want to do it, and this is your ideal life.
We look forward to seeing you inside of our ILMA budgeting course. Have a beautiful day.